So I remember being scared of his art, and then I remember being mesmerized by Egyptian Queen in particular. I remember staring at the marble column and thinking like, but again, it wasn't really registering as like Grandpa did this. It was just I saw it and I really appreciated it just for how beautiful it was, and it just I felt something. It wasn't something I can express with words. It was more of just like a internalized feeling.
Welcome back to the Comics Cube, everyone. Today I am with Sara Frazetta, the owner and founder of Frazetta Girls and the granddaughter of the legendary Frank Frazetta. How are you today?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me. And it's actually 9 p.m. here and 9 a.m. in the Philippines. So that's pretty interesting.
It's an easy way to tell time. It's just I just switched
Yeah,
the AM and the PM.
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
you are the granddaughter of, if not the greatest, definitely the most influential fantasy painter who ever lived. How does it? How did it feel growing up in that family, in that household?
In retrospect, it was definitely a unique family experience. But at the time when I was growing up, it was just Grandpa, and I of course acknowledged his artwork around the house. I mean, it was everywhere. Like I spent a lot of time in his studio, and you'd see like piles of it in his studio. And then I was in the museum, and my first like job with my grandma was actually telling her if the paintings were crooked. I was doing that as like a toddler. She said I had a good eye for it. So so I was always around it, but it was never, and I never really understood like his impact on the world until he passed away.
So it was a thing where it was just the art was just all around you. It was just a fact of life.
Exactly. It was just, I mean, I have people from high school saying like, asking me like, why didn't you ever mention this? And I said, well, because my grandfather was still alive at the time, and I never thought of it. I never saw him as like a famous fantasy artist. It was just Grandpa. So it's interesting to have that perspective.
When did you realize he was a famous fantasy artist?
I understood the enormity of it when I went out to California. It was in 2011. It was the year after he passed away, and we went to San Diego Comic-Con. Robert Rodriguez, the film director, was hosting a huge event regarding the art. He was going to like at the time do a Fire and Ice live action remake, and he also brought out all the original art. So he had that on display, and he had like all of these like people that I idolize, like movie producers and actors. And I was around that, and people were coming up to me saying, I'm doing this because of your grandfather. And that's when I was like, oh wow, like okay, so he influenced what I am in love with, which was at the time film. So I think that was the time where it clicked. I'm like, and now I need to learn about Grandpa. And then it was a few years later that I started Frazetta Girls, but it was, part because I felt like a duty, because I loved my grandpa more than anyone, and my grandma, and then it was also because of like I understood how big this legacy was, and I'm like someone has to do this. This is and it's really cool. Like what an honor. It's like I never thought it would happen though. It's just crazy.
Did
That's
he
cool.
did you have but I mean, even though you didn't know how big he was, you probably had an appreciation for his artwork even back then.
I did. My earliest memories were, fear. I had a lot of fear from his paintings because of the monsters are scary. I mean, I just distinctly remember the Buck Rogers piece. And it almost kind of looks like Chewbacca coming out of the cave. And I remember that was right in the hallway next to my grandma's bathroom. And every time I'd come out of the bathroom, like she had a rotary phone, so I'd sit at the wall, like on her staircase next to the rotary phone. I'd be like calling my mom, and I would just like stare at this painting. And then she also had Downward to Earth, which is his more like abstract art,
Mhm.
and it was really eerie, especially for a child. So I remember being scared of his art, and then I remember being mesmerized by Egyptian Queen in particular. I remember staring at the marble column and thinking like, but again, it wasn't really registering as like Grandpa did this. It was just I saw it and I really appreciated it just for how beautiful it was, and it just I felt something. It wasn't something I can express with words. It was more of just like a internalized feeling.
So you saw Egyptian Queen as something that your grandpa did, and then in 2019 it broke every record for every
Yeah.
comic book auction ever. And when you
Yeah.
see something like that, how surreal is it for you?
I mean, it's surreal, but it's I'm more proud because of my grandpa. I know he would have been really excited to break a record. When he actually was alive, a lot of people don't know this. They think, oh, he never got to enjoy money like while he was alive, and that's not true because a lot of his artworks was selling for like hundreds of thousands while he was alive. I'm pretty sure like a few of them sold for like 600,000. And this was like in the 90s, so they were going pretty high. But it was in 2000, the end of 2009, Conan the Destroyer sold for $1 million. And he was, of course, never going to spend that much money. He didn't, he never paid a bill in his life. He didn't really understand like the concept of money. He was always very humble and frugal. But it was like that mindset of him of like breaking a record. He was like, "Oh my God, I just broke a huge record," and he was so proud of himself. So I think he would have been proud of Egyptian Queen, but he might have wanted it to go a little higher, to be honest. He'd have been like, that's a masterpiece. It should be 10 million. I could hear him saying that now.
It's like the record for the highest selling comic book piece of art. It should go higher than a comic book selling
Right,
piece of art.
right. He'd say like it's fine art. I mean, that was always
Yeah.
his feeling about his artwork. He's like, even though I'm an illustrator, it's fantasy artwork. I feel like I'm in the category of a fine artist, like a Renaissance artist. So he always had a really like all of his pieces that he held on to until he passed away. Those were like his top pieces. I mean, throughout his career, he sold the ones that he wasn't really thrilled with. He would, that's how they made their money. And as most artists do, they
Yeah.
sell their artwork. But the ones that he felt like were special and that could break records, he held on to them until the very end.
How do you feel about a certain sentiment going on in the art world, in the fine art world? Still, it's less today, but it's still going on that things like fantasy art aren't as valid as like, landscapes and portraits and realistic art.
I feel like it's all about the branding of it, to be honest with you. I mean, I just think it's simple marketing and stories that have been passed on, and then we're humans, so it's what you perceive as what someone tells you is good, then you almost perceive it as good. So I really think that that's going to change. I think the people like obviously are really into fantasy art, they're into comic art, and they're putting, they're bidding finally. I mean, look at Pokemon cards. I mean, they're going for like an enormous amount of money. So I think kind of like we're changing in society now, and wanting to spend money on like what we're really connecting to, not just like some pretentious, piece of art at Art Basel that this dealer says buy this for this money, because it's not just about investing anymore. Now it's about like nostalgia and sentiment. So I do see that shift happening, and I mean maybe Frazetta is the one that's started that shift. It could be.
I think so. Did you end up going back uh all the ways to his early comic book career to see what, the stuff he did really early on, like get a full retrospective of his career?
Oh yeah, yeah. I've been diving into his career now for, I mean, the first couple of years we were really for Zeta Girls as a company. We were going to the Comic Cons, just meeting fans. I mean, most of the fans were teaching me because, like I said, he was grandpa. So when they would come to the booths, they would teach me about his career and his early years. But I've been really dedicating like the last few years to understanding like who he was as an artist, and what trials he went through, and who were his mentors, and I mean his early works. It's like this misconception, and some people know. I shouldn't say like everyone. I'd like to generalize, but in his early years, he worked his ass off. I mean, he was drawing since he was 3 years old. And back in 1928, we didn't have all these distractions. So that's something he committed to all of the time. If he was not out playing sports, he was drawing. And even in class, he wasn't paying attention. He was drawing. And then his teachers actually told his parents, they said, you need to enroll him into an art school. Like it's not really, there's not much we can do for him here. But he did want to stay in high school for sports, that because that was his other love as much as art. But yeah, he went to a little art academy when he was 8 years old. He got his first job when he was 14, and he started working with Tally Ho Comics. It was published his first Snowman story when he was only 16. And then it was just he was through Fiction House, Standard, going back to back with these jobs of just like erasing pencil lines. And it was one gentleman named Graham Ingalls, and Graham Ingalls saw his doodles, and he said, Frank, you're really good. And he was like, you can do your own feature. And my grandpa was like, I'm not ready to do my own feature, please no. Which every artist feels like they're never ready, I think, in the beginning. But
Yeah.
most people in any career, there's exceptions to that rule. But yeah, so he got his first feature. It was Judy of the Jungle, and he was really influenced by Jack Kirby and Milton Caniff early on in his career. So he didn't really have like his Frazetta style yet. He was still learning from other artists. But I mean, he would just, again, like after that, kind of, you know, that I believe it was standard, that fell apart. And then he just kept going to one comic place after the next and did his time. I mean, he did years of work.
He's gotten so big that you know, what's it? Al Cap strip, Lil Abner. Lil Abner was, you know, that was a huge strip way back in the day. And now they're coming out in collections, and there is a specific collection that is specifically for Frank Frazetta strips, which kind of blows my mind that he worked on Lil Abner.
Yeah, the Little Abner. I mean, I think from what I've read, he really loved that job because it paid really well and it gave him that freedom. Like he still could go out and enjoy his week and play baseball and goof around with his friends and chase women, because that's what he liked to do when he was when he was a young man. But he had like 3 days of like hard work, and then I think, I mean, Al Cap was paying him like an enormous amount of money back then. It was they started having a falling out when Al Cap wanted him to move to Boston or just drive into Boston too frequently. And he said that he felt like he was losing himself in that. I mean, he was becoming like Al Cap and not Frank Frazetta. So that's when he was, you know, at the breaking point where he's like, I either stay being like a ghost artist or I launch into and find myself. So then he eventually quit. But it wasn't easy after he quit. He couldn't find a job for the life of him. I mean, I think Cap had a lot of influence in that industry at the time, and it's a small world.
It was huge.
Yeah, exactly. It was huge. It's like Hollywood today. You don't piss the wrong person off. So he pissed off Cap, and they never made amends with each other throughout the rest of their lives. But it was from his best friend Roy Krinkle. Roy Krinkle was the one who got him into doing the Ace covers. Edgar Rice Burroughs said, Frank, you got to stop with the inks and move on to the oils. We needed to get you into the covers. So but again, it wasn't easy. It was a process. It was years.
It sounds to me like you were, you know, you're mentioning growing up, you were surrounded by all of this artwork. You knew all of the artwork, but because you were surrounded by the entire history of his career, like the reason that you needed to be educated by the fans, you know, in 2013 moving onwards, was because you didn't have the structure and the chronology to really understand that.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, when did you think, what was a pivotal moment in his career that really launched it?
I think I guess it's hard to define like what is the pivotal moment, you know, but in terms of like notoriety, I would say the Lancer book covers for Conan the Barbarian. I mean, that was when it just took off. And I mean, his movie posters were doing really well. His Ringo depiction of his character of Ringo, and was like, you know, in the Bleach magazine, it was like very like renowned and everyone was talking about it. But it was that iconic Conan the Adventurer cover that then my grandpa like said, okay, now I know, now I am who I think I am. That was kind of that switch in his head where he got that confidence, and then he started becoming like very picky on what jobs he took, and he had that luxury, he had that fame and that success.
That is interesting because, you know, I speak to comic creators and everything, and no matter how long they've been in the industry, a lot of them still feel imposter syndrome. A lot of them still don't feel like they're there. And Frank Frazetta, especially in his later interviews, never seemed to lack for confidence.
I believe he did. Like I know he had moments like where he wasn't very confident, but he didn't let that show, because that was like who he wanted the world to see. He wanted the world to see a confident, strong man, and he was mostly confident. Like even until he passed away when he was 84, And I actually spent like the last year with him. He moved down to Boca Grande, Florida, where we are, and that was his second like vacation home. It was after my grandma passed away, and my mom and my aunt were taking care of him. But man, he couldn't like. I mean, from his strokes and his thyroid issues, he was like basically. I mean, he couldn't use his right hand. He was on a breathing machine. I mean, he was a mess, like in health wise. But he still had that confidence. Like when someone would like piss him off, he's like, "I'm gonna go kick their ass," and it's like, okay, well, you can barely walk, but whatever. So that was just who he was. He always let that part of him shine out, and I think that's what's so inspiring about him was he was just like this, like it's like what we all want to be, like this strong, courageous person who just doesn't care what people think. I mean, he was proud of his work. I mean, he watched his Painting with Fire documentary at least 150 times while he was in Florida, like the last year of his life, because I think it was beautiful. He was really reflecting on like what he did. And he would like point at the TV and go, "See, they say I'm great. I'm pretty great, huh?" And I'm like, yeah, grandpa, you're great. You're great. And he watched Fire and Ice, his movie, hundreds of times. So, by doing those things, you're looking at what you've done and appreciating it. So it's very inspiring when I think about it.
You see Fire and Ice as a kid?
Oh gosh, I
Yeah.
think I was 6 years old. I was like
Yeah.
6 or 8, but he put it on for me. He was like, look again, but it still didn't connect like, oh, grandpa, like I'm sitting right by you. You did this. It was just more of a, wow, this is really great. Like we both love the same thing. It wasn't, I don't know. I don't know why it didn't click with me, to be honest.
You know what it reminds me of? There's a clip of Dwayne Johnson letting his daughter watch Moana, and he's singing along to Maui's, because it's
Mhm.
him. And then his
Right.
his daughter covers his mouth and says, "You're ruining it."
You're That's good. I is that a clip on YouTube?
I think it's on Instagram. It's on his
Oh my
Instagram.
God. That's really good. I'm gonna watch that.
But when you're growing up around it, you don't notice the scope, right?
No, you don't. I mean, my grandpa he was like the best grandfather. Like I'm telling you, he'd put like little Mickey Mouse ears on and get on the floor and like just like annoy me. And I'd be like, "Cramp, stop." Like we just had this like really like just special relationship where we really understood each other, like kindred spirits. And he was just goofy all the time, like just fun, goofy, like a big kid. I mean, we played Nintendo 64. We would like go pick wild berries during the day. I had my little pole wagon and I had all my like wind up toys. I mean, my grandma and grandpa at the time, they I was the first grandchild of 11, and they both begged my mom to have a baby. They were like, "Please have a baby. We're so bored. Like, we need we need a project." So I was their project, and they spoiled the crap out of me. I mean, honestly, adulthood has not been easy after that, what that childhood was. I was like, why isn't anyone nurturing me and telling me how special I am? And I'm like, oh, grandma and grandpa are gone. That's why. Terrible.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear that.
No, it's hey, we can have one special part of our life. That should be enough. I'm just spoiled.
Do any of the other grandchildren share your passion for Frank Frazetta's legacy and art?
I think they all do, like, but no one's as vocal as I am about it. I mean, and they all had like their own unique relationships. Like, most of them were very young when they knew my grandfather. I was lucky enough I was born in 1988, and he didn't really fall ill till he was like it was 1995. So I was lucky enough to spend like my subconscious growing years with him, and even after I moved to Florida in 95, and then we'd come back and go back and forth from Pennsylvania to Florida half the year. And I mean, they were my friends. Like
Yeah.
that's who I spent every waking moment with. I mean, my grandma told me a story when I was in the mall with them. A little kid came up to me and they said, "Do you want to play?" And I said, "This is not a play place. This is a mall." And I was like 3. So I was very, I was like an old little woman as a child. But that's just because I was around my grandparents. They were everything to me. So I don't really know, like, to speak about them. I'm sure, but I think I got the most special moments.
Yeah, it's funny because I was researching for this interview, and every time you showed up, on a Frank Frazetta article or something, it's always Sara Frazetta, Frank Frazetta's granddaughter, which made me think she must be his only granddaughter.
how I wish sometimes. I'm just kidding.
Okay. Um, so here's my other question of, you know, I asked you what you think the pivotal moment was. Do you think it had something to do with the fact that, he's coming from comics, he realized, from everything I've read, just doing covers or doing posters paid way more than doing an entire comic. Do you think that was a turning point in his
Yes.
career? Yeah.
For sure. It was after the Al Cap situation that kind of jaded him. He was just like, I'm never doing interior work again. I mean, even with his Death Dealer series, he wanted to put out a Death Dealer comic series. He did, but he refused to do the interior work. And oh my God, it would have been so epic if we got a Death Dealer comic and he did interior work. I'm like, why? So yeah, he would rather be outside shooting his guns and playing, and he was like really into golf. I mean, he got his brown belt when he was in his 30s with karate. I mean, he was just a very active physical person. So it was a lot of the time, he said, when he was painting, it was work to him, and it was like he didn't want to do it. Like he would just be up all night for a single night or 3 nights and just get it, like just put that energy onto the canvas, like that frustration, and then go play. I mean, of course there were like exceptions to that. Like he loved playing with classical music and getting into his zone, and you can kind of see that with certain pieces of art. You can feel more from certain pieces. So yeah, he picked and choose what he wanted to do. He was particular.
Yeah. And what was your particular favorite thing that he ever did, if you had to pick just one?
I change a lot of my, like, because I look at his art like all day, every day. I mean, it's my life now. But right now I would say Golden Girl.
Okay.
His watercolor is just, I mean, it was done in the early or late 50s, I believe, early 60s. I think, or maybe early 50s. I'm not sure. I have to go look at the date again. He something that my grandpa would do is he would um create the painting, and then he would copyright it like a few years later or like a decade later, because he like realized, oh, I should put a copyright symbol. So so a lot of the dates are not correct. Especially if you look at the Conan pieces, all the dates are like after they were published, all of the copyright and dates. Don't ask. So, but anyway, the Golden Girl, I think it was like, it's like that sensitive part of him that he did keep hidden. That the Golden Girl was actually based on his first love, Carol. Her name was Carol, and she was a dancer, and she had those long, beautiful legs. He said he actually talked about her to me quite a few times. I'm sure my grandma knew and wasn't happy about that. But what
Was
happened
that
was
awkward?
yeah, yeah, no. See, that's what's weird about my family. We're very open. We're Italian, Sicilian.
Mhm.
So it's, should baby come in and be like, oh, Frank, what are you saying? Like, give him hell for it. They get in a big fight later. But yeah, he would talk about how beautiful she was, and he was really upset about it always, because she was Irish, full-blooded Irish, and he was full-blooded Sicilian, and her parents would not let her date a Sicilian man. And that was, that's interesting. I mean, especially, now in 2021, to be talking about that, that's just, I'm glad to see we're progressing and as humans a
It
little
wouldn't
bit.
even be an issue now. Un-
No, it would not.
yeah, unless the Sicilian was in the mob. I guess I don't know.
Right. Yeah, no, he didn't have any mob ties. I mean, I think that would be pretty cool if he did. I'd probably tell everyone about it. But no mob ties, unfortunately. But no, I actually, funny enough, speaking of mob, my grandma, I believe she had some Irish mafia ties, which
Mm.
is very interesting. So he ended up with an Irish woman. I mean, after all, like, I guess my grandma's family just didn't care. But yeah, so back to Golden Girl again. I'm digressing, but the little elements of it, like if you look really closely, you could see like the little details of like the frog and the parrot and the wolves and the jaguar. Like it's all so strange, but it works. Like it's like he was completely just being himself, and that's what I loved about my grandpa, was he was so authentic, like so original with all of his ideas for the most part. He had some swipes, but very, very few. I mean, I just started art and I'm like swiping left and right, because I'm like, man, I'm like, I cannot, like, I don't have that image. Like, it's not just like sitting in there. So he just had that ability to like pull from his surroundings and really like just make it happen, which to me is incredible.
I'm sure he was swiping a lot in the beginning.
In the beginning, he was.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right. And you know what? That's what I go back to. It's like he started at 3 years old. So if you start at 3 years old and you never like you don't miss a day, of course you're going to be great. I mean, just give it time. It just happens. And yeah, he had a natural ability. He did. I mean, you look at his 3-year-old artwork. He had a great like depth perception at 3 years old. He really understood depth, and that's something like I find really challenging to. I mean, you can just see some people have it, and some people have to work really hard for it.
Have you ever heard of the 10,000 hour rule?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So I feel like
Yeah.
if you start at 3 years old, you'll get 10,000 hours in easy by the time you're
Yeah.
an
By
adult.
14.
Yeah,
For
by 14.
sure. Yeah. He got his 10,000 hours and for sure 14.
Speaking of swipes, how do you feel about a lot of, homages, tributes, swipes whenever you see your grandpa's artwork? Like there's this one, I forget the name of the piece. It's the woman in the forest hunting a tiger.
Oh,
And then
Escape from Venus.
yeah, that one. And then they replaced the
Mhm.
tiger with Hobbes from Calvin and
Oh
Hobbes.
yeah. I love homages, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But because I I think most of us, I mean, I always say this, like we're plagiarizing from nature. Like, come on, none of us can actually say like any of this is our idea. Like it's a miracle that we're here as like these human forms. Like it's weird, we don't know what this actually is. So when people take it very seriously, like, oh, this is my idea, this is my art, or I said those words. So it's like, well, yeah, but you're passing it on, and I think like if someone can keep like recreating from it, that's the point of art. But I think like for instance like the homages in comics, that's like part of the culture. Like
Yeah.
that's what makes comics. I mean, it might be like one thing if you're a fine artist and you're swiping left and right and then putting it in, and that might get a little muddy. But comics, of course, and movies, like, of course, like it's what you do.
Yeah, it's my
Get
personal
inspired.
my personal favorite one is Dark Kingdom. So it's Bill Sienkiewicz took Dark Kingdom and replaced it with Asterix.
I love that one. Anything Bill does though, it's like it's magic. Like he's so freaking incredibly talented, and he's so humble. That's what's crazy about him. I'm like, wait, how is this like humble person just giving, I mean, his artwork looks like fine art too. Like he brought more like fine art into like comics, and just his like style, and it's like all over the place, but like you can still tell that it's Bill. Like every piece, it's like that's Bill. I can see those lines that are just like loose and like a wonderful madness. But it brings, Bill was one of the first artists when I started going to comic cons, and I didn't really have an appreciation for art. This is something that I'm developing over time as I grow and become more intelligent. But when I was very naive, 23 years old, and I'm at comic cons, I remember seeing Bill Sienkiewicz's art, and I was just like blown away by it. I'm like, how does one do this? And I actually made a post early on, and I said, he's my favorite artist. And the Frazetta fans are like, what? Uproar. And I'm like, oh, of course, Grandpa's my favorite artist, but Bill's close.
You can't name a family member as your favorite artist. It's weird.
That's it. Thank you.
Right?
Thank you. That is weird. It's like bias then. It's like, come on, I don't have to say that. Like, I think my actions are showing how much I appreciate his art.
You're supposed to love your family member's artwork.
You'd think some families. Sometimes family's the worst with being unsupportive, but maybe not so much I don't know, in the Philippines. I think you guys have it's Italians. I don't know what it is. The Italians want to see their families fall. I have to go back into history to figure that one out.
Oh, we're legally obligated to support everything our family does, whether it's our third, fourth cousin twice removed. I'm kidding.
But maybe it should be the law. Maybe it'd be a happier place. You must support your family.
No, short digression. I told you beforehand that I've gone 3 hours sometimes on these interviews. Bill Sienkiewicz is one of them, and the entire time I'm like, how are you of all people this humble?
Right? He's just like, he's so spiritual. Like that's what's like a beautiful, and when he talks, I recently had an hour conversation with Bill, and I was like I felt like I was levitating afterwards, because everything he says is poetic. Like, and he doesn't even mean to be poetic. He's just so poetic. I'm like, I'm like, oh my, and I'm like so complimentary. I'm like, oh my God, like the way you just said that, it was just so, and he's like, oh, stop. And I'm like, I'm just gonna keep complimenting you the whole time because this is like, and this is like too much for me to handle. But he was just giving me tips and like how to like find my voice and everything. And but the thing I loved about Bill was he wasn't like telling me it in it like a you have to do this way. It was just a beautiful like, you know, it resonated with me because it was like gentle how he gave this advice. It wasn't like I'm the taskmaster, you must listen to me. It was just, it came from a really genuine place. And
Yeah.
that's what resonates with me then, and inspires me to be more like Bill.
Right. So let's talk about you doing artwork. I am surprised to hear you say that, you're only now appreciating artwork. You're only now trying to get into art. Because I would think that being surrounded by Frank Frazetta's artwork, you'd have tried much earlier.
You know, when I was a little kid, like I was like, you know, gosh, like elementary school, I would draw. Like we'd have music on in the house, and like my mom loved listening to like soundtracks. So we'd be listening to like movie soundtracks, but just I'm trying to think what it was, like Titanic, for instance, like with James Horner. We'd be listening to like very like cinematic music. So we'd all get on the ground and just draw and paint. But I just never like thought of it as like, oh, this is what I want to do, or it never like felt like, you know, this is me. In school, I would do it if I had to, like it was an assignment. I was more growing up. I was more of like a act like I wanted to be an academic. Like that's what I in my mind, that's what I thought I should be. And I don't know if it's maybe because my grandma, like she'd always tell me like, no, she'd instill creativity, but she'd also instill logic. She's like, don't she always kind of pushed us away from art. And I think that was like her being a little bit jaded in the art industry and what she had to deal with my grandpa and protecting him. And I think she knew that it wasn't like an easy road. So she'd always say like, you can go be a doctor, go be a lawyer. Like you need to go to New York, like go make money. Like it was always money, money, money. So throughout school, I was really focused on, I was on like the legal teams, like I'd be doing like my mock trial. So I was like very like focused on like being logical and like, okay, how many scholarships can I get? I need to go to college and I need to excel there. And it was about the time like when I was in college, that's when I started like noticing that, and I wanted to be a fitness trainer. Like I was always very into health and wellness, and so I had like my mind occupied on like what I thought I should be. And then I kept realizing like it was my path was hard. Like I was like, okay, I'm really horrible at math. I'm like failing simple statistics and I'm not getting by anymore with my charm. Like that ended, in high school. If I charmed someone like, could you just help me? And I mean, also in Florida and our education system is not very good. But so I think it was like in college, I started realizing I'm like, I'm not going down the right path. I went into nursing school and it was just super, super like, it wasn't fun for me. And then I went over into marketing, advertising, and communications. And when I started doing like my presentations for advertising class and we had like group projects and I got to go in front of the class and present, that's when I felt like I was really alive. I was like, ooh, I like this. Like this is what I can get behind. So then I finished college and then I started going more into the path of like, okay, I think I want, I always suppress the feeling, but like inside of me, and I think we all have a tendency to do that. Like I always wanted to act, but I'm like so scared of it. I'm like, I can't get up there and like get red and fumble my words. And what if I don't remember? But I always wanted to be like in that spotlight. I always had that feeling inside of me, or sing like, but I always do those things in private because I'm too scared to put myself out there, if I'm being completely honest. So when I graduated, I started working at a production studio, and there was like they were doing voiceovers, and I started casting voice talents for the production owner, and he was an audio engineer. And when I started doing that, and I was getting really envious of like the actors. I was like, oh, like I want to be in the booth. Like I was like booking them and like scouting them, but I was like, oh, this isn't like fulfilling for me. So I started just getting like this like angst. And that same year was when my grandfather passed away. And I was like, and then I was introduced to Robert Rodriguez and that whole world, and it just kind of like opened up for me. And I was like, this is creative. This is something I want to follow and see where it leads me. I mean, it's been, and doors keep opening, and it's just, it's not like that acting or performing, but in a way, like just being able to come on and like talk to you, like, and being able to like just have like this community of like all creatives, like that has been so fulfilling to me. And I'm like, I'm so happy I didn't go into nursing. Thank God. Thank God I failed statistics.
So when did you start doing art again? Like what kind of artwork?
So the artwork was actually in 2017. I was going to Comic Cons, like admiring artists, but I didn't think that was me. So it was in 2017. I had a surgery, and I'm like, as you can tell, a very like kind of active person. I'm like, go go go, like that's like my mind. I'm always like,
Yeah.
like just talking a lot. and in 2017, I had to sit still for months. So I was like, what am I going to do? I can't look at my phone all the day. I'm getting so depressed. Like, this is horrible. And I
2017, that's like
actually,
the worst year in human history.
it was horrible. Oh my God. It really was, right? Like
Well, until
statistically.
2020, I guess.
Yeah, until 2020. It just keeps getting more and more fun to be alive. um, can't wait for AI. Like, like, can someone just make me a robot, like partial robot, and I can just have the consciousness? That'd be great. No aches and pains. But no, so had to sit down, and I actually, it was one of his funny animals comics from when he like early in his career, and there was like a printout of it, and I just started copying it. Like I just looked at it and I started copying it, and I guess this is where like the crazy like confidence came in. I like saw something in it. I was like, I think I can draw. So then I just started copying all of his artwork to teach myself, because until recently I haven't had like the discipline to sit down and like really learn like in a formal manner, like watch YouTube videos or like pick up a book and read like about anatomy, and really like, because I just think I was like so like annoyed by like schooling and like how frustrated I became at it. I was just like rejecting it. I'm like, I don't want to learn this way. I will learn my own way. So I just kept copying his art, and honestly, like through that, it was like almost like it was very like spiritual. Like I felt like I this sounds a little crazy, but like at times, like I really felt like he was there with me. Like
Yeah.
I really like some of the pieces I did, like I go back and I look and I'm like, okay, grandpa had to be there, because those lines like aren't my lines. Like some of them looked very close, and then some of them looked horrible. I started sharing it in 2017 online. I was like, you know what? Everyone's going to see my journey, because the people, like some, I've had a couple artists come to me and they say, how, or don't you like, feel like overwhelmed by that you're in the shadow of Frank Frazetta? And I go, no, I'm like, if anything, that's like empowering. And I'm not gonna trying to be Frank Frazetta. I'm like, it's a
Yeah.
way of connecting to my grandfather and understanding like his choices and his lines. And that helps me understand him more as a person. And it's the way that I chose to learn about art. It's just Frazetta. So it's been really fun. And it wasn't until last year I started getting like serious, and kind of like my grandpa's experience. I had Black Flag Comics. His name is Jason Wallace. He messaged me on Facebook and he goes, I want you to do a cover for our small comic company. They're growing like exponentially. Like they're great. But I go, Jason, I'm not ready. Nope, I'm not doing it. And he goes, you just have to do the pencils. He goes, we'll have an inker, we'll have a colorist. He goes, you just got to do it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I took the job, and I did a few homages, obviously, to my
Yeah.
grandpa. But now over like, the last year of being more serious about it, I am starting to like kind of understand like composition and depth, and thinking of my own characters, and it's starting to come to me. I think I just have a lot of anxiety and like fear internally of like really embracing that part of like who I am.
Yeah.
And
You've
I don't
you've
know
got
why.
enough. You've gotten a few covers since then as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's pretty
Couple.
cool. You
Yeah, thank you.
would you ever do interiors?
I'm not there yet, like with my skill, because
Yeah.
I know with interior work, you really have to be consistent. I mean, I don't. My hat is off to
Hard.
the interior. Yeah, wow, and disciplined. Like it really, I admire the artists that can sit there for 8 hours and just focus. I mean, that's like you have a meditative mind, really. At that point, I just get I see a bird and I'm like, bird, we must go feed it. And I actually did a thing yesterday where I was like sitting down. I'm like, all right, you're actually going to draw for 1 hour. I know it sounds sad and pathetic. And I'm like, you're not going to look at your phone. You're going to put a timer on and you're just going to draw for an hour. And I got a lot more done than, I'm always complaining, oh, it takes too much time. Well, yeah, Sarah, because you're getting up and moving around and doing this and that. And all you got to do a load of laundry, just finding excuses for distraction. So my hat is off to people that can focus. Like, you got strong brains, a strong mind. That's impressive.
And there's always that joke going around the internet that says, if you ever want your house cleaned, move in with a writer, because a writer will clean the
They
house
don't,
instead
they
of.
don't, yeah, no, that's so, that's so true. They'll find everything else to do. I'm like, oh, this looks a little dirty. I need to do this right now. And it's like, no, just go draw. But yeah, so we'll see. I'd like to see where I'm at. Like, I'll be excited to see where I'm at in like 2027, 10 years from like 2017, how much I've progressed. So it's interesting.
That'll be exciting.
Thank you.
2013, 3 years after your grandpa passed away, you and
Yep.
your mom started Frazetta Girls. So
Yeah.
can you walk me through the genesis of that, of the founding of the company?
So it was 2011 was when Robert Rodriguez became involved in the estate, and he started, just helping tour the original art and merchandising. And I have to give most credit to Robert Rodriguez because he was like the visionary of like what a Frazetta brand was in my mind. Like, I mean, he did these like really cool full sublimation t-shirts, and they were wild. Like, we sell them now to this day, and they just had like the full art on it. And like, I'm like, people aren't going to wear these. And sure enough, Robert was right. Fans loved them. They're like, oh my God, this is so cool. And then he started producing limited edition Jaclays, and they were just like these. He rented an $80,000 camera, and he took pictures of the original art, which had never been done before. My grandma was notoriously, let me say it nicely, frugal with investing and spending and trying to build something. She just did everything as like cheaply as possible. So the prints were never like really, I mean, the old vintage prints. We recently had a customer say, these prints are terrible. I'm like, I know, they're the vintage prints. They were in the basement from the 1980s. I know, but look at our website. We have plenty of vivid, beautiful, beautiful prints available. So my grandma never really did that, but Robert did. He got the $80,000 camera. He photographed the originals, and he made these like 24 by 32 prints. Like, they were just gorgeous. And the way he set up like the exhibit, he had like giant murals of Frazetta art. And he made a banner for the Comic Cons. Robert Rodriguez presents Frazetta. And when my mom and I would go there, I mean, we were just like, wow, this is incredible. Like, the response, Robert's passion, like the other filmmakers' passion. And we were like, we want to do this. We want to go to Comic Cons and help build like a Frazetta brand. So then we came up with the name Frazetta Girls, because it's like a double entendre. He was known for his girls, and it might not be politically correct now, but in the 50s, they're pinup girls, they were Frazetta girls. So he would reference women as girls. So it was a double entendre of that. And then, we're his girls. So we just thought that that's the perfect name. Still to this day, I have to explain it.
It is the perfect name, though.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we started at like Miami. It was in Miami. We went to our first convention,
Yeah.
and it was just again, like I just stayed inspired because of really the fans, like Grandpa's fans. You guys like, or like embraced us, like oh, this isn't the family just coming in and capitalizing. It was really like an educational thing, and it was just like this, being able to keep my grandpa alive. And that's like, I don't get really, I get really upset like on his memorials, and I tear up and I cry a lot, but I do feel like he's here every day because of what I'm doing. Like, it's just, he's living through all of us. But so yeah, so we went to the Comic Cons. We kind of pulled back same year in 2017. We stopped attending because our setup wasn't like and I brought my partner Joe in, my life partner of 12 years. I don't want to call him my boyfriend anymore because it's too long, but he's my
Okay.
life partner and
Noted.
and my business partner. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like boyfriend. I'm like, we don't want to get married, so it's just like this weird thing. But it was really funny because my grandpa was like he loved him. Like my grandpa was like, my grandpa was very particular on people he liked, and Joey was like this great. He's a great listener. He's a great teacher. He just has like this. He has like one of those minds that's disciplined and wants to grow things. And if he doesn't know how to do something, he'll research all day, puts his mind to it, and he gets done. Like really incredible. So Joey came in with me in 2017. My mom kind of stepped down because honestly, you know, even until 2019, I still had like a bunch of other jobs because Frazetta Girls wasn't like paying our bills, to be quite honest. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna go work at a various jobs. I was doing social media management and working at like a front of desk boutique, and I just I've always been I've had a job since I was 14. Like work's just part of me. But he stayed home and he was like, we're gonna build a new website. We're going to take this all online. We're going to grow the social media. We're going to grow like a serious Frazetta brand and work with, collaborate with other brands that are notable and complementary to Frazetta and always have integrity. So we started that in 2017, and we've been just, I mean, this is our life. When I say that, like we don't like do things. we just work, and we still have like, I mean, we have like these incredible collaborations coming out that I can't talk about yet. There's just like, there's so many things like coming into the wheelhouse now, and talks of expansion of like growing his IP in ways that I didn't think were going to be possible, if I'm being completely honest. But it's like once you like open yourself up to that, like that mindset of like anything's possible, and I want to grow this as big as it can be for the sake of like Frazetta being like the adult Disney, like that's like in my mind where I'm like, it just could be enormous. Yeah, it could just be, there's just it's endless. Like there's endless opportunities and endless like expansion. And we were talking the other day, and I'm like, what's our like end goal? Like what are we what are we doing? And we both like looked at each other and we're like, it's the journey. It's just a process really of like, it's exciting. It's to see other people happy, and like we make everything like Joey. I give Joey most of the credit. I'm mostly dramatic, and he's like putting out the fire after fire and keeping me like balanced. But I mean, we like from our calendar to our like little death dealer keychains, like we draw everything, design it, and then we have it manufactured. So we see the process from the beginning till the very end. And it's just, at first it was so frustrating because you'd get in like the product and it's all wrong. And you're like, I don't have any money to deal with this. Oh my God, what are we going to do? And it was so stressful. But now it's becoming over the years, it's just growing to a point of like where we're more comfortable. And now we can just kind of like play. We're like, okay, like now let's do this. Let's make skate decks. Let's, what else can we make? Let's make gym shorts. Like we need to make a Frazetta gym line. Like, let's make everything. So we're just having a blast, to be honest.
When I saw that, you were putting his stuff on apparel, I was like,
Yeah.
well, that's an obvious idea that's never been done. That's a stroke of genius.
Well, grandma had some, like, to give her credit. My grandma had like but it was like the white t-shirt with like the black image. And it was like just boring. Like that didn't inspire me to get into the business. I'm like, but like I said, with Robert, because he's like he's a genius, and in his creative field, he's like, a one of one. And he had that vision, and Robert inspired the whole start of it. And we really like listen to the fans too. Like, what do you guys want? Like, tell us. Like, I mean, people have been begging for like simple refrigerator magnets for like years. And I said to Joey, I'm like, make the magnets now. I'm like, we have to answer to the fans. Like, if they want something, we have to give it to them. And they usually do really well. Like what the fans want, they support. So it's great.
Do you think your grandma would have been more receptive to these ideas if social media had been around back then, and she had more of a concrete idea of how many people would actually buy these things?
For sure, because she was about money. My grandma was like, a businesswoman. She had her creativity and her own like funny little quirks about her. She was very, very talented in her own ways, but she was a businesswoman, and she wanted numbers. I mean, one thing we've been lacking is like publication. So we've been tied up with publishing for a while now, but that's something like obviously artists are like, we need books. We need to hold portfolios and books so we can pull them out. I mean, wall space is limited for most people. So that's something we've been missing, and something we're gonna, go in a big way as of this year. So it's gonna we're gonna blow everyone away with what's coming.
Is that one of those things you can't talk about in full?
Well, I have mentioned it before, but
Yeah.
we actually did a deal for Frazetta Girls with Toshin Publishing, and the like Bible of Frazetta is coming, like a real coffee table book of Frazetta is coming. I mean, I don't know. Did you see the masterpieces of fantasy art that
Yeah.
Toshin put out?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to be that big. That book is like hard for me to pick up. I like pick it up. I'm like, oh my god, it's like 16 pounds, but it's just like,
I believe I have a Toshin book here somewhere. Yeah, I've got the so it's this big. It's about MC Escher. So
Oh wow.
would it
Yeah.
be bigger than this, or
Can you turn it to the side real quick? Let me see the width.
so I'm sure it'll be thicker
Yes,
than this.
it'll be thicker than that. Yep.
But what
I don't
about
think it will be as thick as the masterpieces of fantasy art. Probably half that size.
and height wise, would you say bigger?
Bigger.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Looking
We
forward to it.
really. That's something I've been working on since, like, it's been years. It's just becoming blurry now. I'm like, we have to make this happen. Just because I want worldwide distribution. I want everyone. I mean, I understand how many countries love Frazetta, and they're not able to buy, like, even like with us, like the shipping's insane. So we have people all over the world. They're like, I would love to buy Frazetta Girls items, but the shipping
Yeah.
and then the taxes, the import fees, it's just like crazy. So that's something we're working on too, is like distribution around the world so everyone can get Frazetta in their hands.
Yep. I will attest to that living here.
Yeah, the importing is like
Yeah, the
crazy.
price of the book is never the problem. It's always the shipping and whether or not customs will decide to tax us, which you never know because that's the government.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I know all about that. I feel so terrible. I'm like, oh, I don't know Brazil gets like hit the hardest. I mean, it's like impossible to ship to Brazil. I just feel, and there's so many Frazetta fans in Brazil. It's crazy. I'm like, I need to just go to Brazil and just bring. Well, I don't even know if I can do that. I'll have to check into that.
Not yet,
We'll
maybe.
see. Yeah, not yet. We'll see.
As we're closing down, is there anything more you'd like to say about Frazetta Girls or your grandpa?
I just want to thank everyone for embracing Frazetta, for loving Frank Frazetta this long. I mean, it's legends never die. Like, it's very true. But it's his fan base. It's the love everyone just gives. That's what keeps this alive and Frazetta alive. So just gratitude. And to you for having me on. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming on. I do think Frazetta.
You're great, by the way. You're a natural. Like, your podcast is gonna freaking take off. You're easy to talk to and wonderful.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So are you.
Oh, thank you. I want to see you do really well with this. So I know it's gonna grow bigger and bigger.
I do think for anyone like coming in and not knowing who Frank Frazetta is, it might actually be difficult to understand his impact because he changed it so much. It's like Jack Kirby, like he just changed it so much that if you go that it's hard to imagine what art was like before they showed up.
Yeah. It really, I mean, there even like it's I don't want to go too far into it, but like there were greats. They're like Joseph Clement Cole, Norman Lindsay, Jose Sagreus, but and now the Sagreus family is starting to carry his legacy on, but a lot of them become an afterthought because it's with humans, out of sight, out of mind, and people they don't, it doesn't keep carrying on, and that's why it's so important for families to get behind the artist and or just people that own the IP and push it and say like this, look, don't forget. And
Yeah.
I just think it's really important. So I actually encourage all families, like, get behind someone or buy an IP and push it, keep pushing it. Great art will never die.
Thank you. That's a good way to end as any. Thank you, Sarah Frazetta.
Thank you.
Everybody go to Frazetta Girls and check it out.